Welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has defended a possible new array of lockdown measures after a reported record spike of over 700 coronavirus infections with 13 deaths across the country.
We have now been in this...
The majority of infections were in the state of Victoria, which has been under strict lockdown for around 3 weeks. Australia had previously prided itself on rapidly containing the initial COVID-19 outbreak, but the second wave that began in Victoria has forced Melbourne into lockdown and sparked outbreaks in other areas, including Sydney.
The further measures that are taken are certainly necessary. They will come at an impact to the economy, and we understand that. But equally, not containing these outbreaks will have that effect also.
Meanwhile, India has reported its biggest daily jump of over 52,000 new virus cases. This is the highest single-day spike in terms of fresh infections in the country so far.
For those who test positive.
Britain's Health Secretary Matt Hancock has said he is worried about a second wave of coronavirus infections in Europe and will not hesitate to bring more quarantine measures in, possibly within the next few days. In the US, protesters have clashed with security forces in Portland hours after Oregon's governor said federal tactical police had agreed to withdraw from the city. This footage shows tear gas and smoke screens being deployed, as well as armed agents in riot gear. The clashes come after Oregon Governor Kate Brown said US Vice President Mike Pence had agreed to a phased end to the deployment that has sparked a standoff between Republican President Donald Trump and Democratic mayors over the use of federal police in their cities. Meanwhile, NASA's Perseverance rover has successfully launched from Florida.
Release.
It will spend 7 months travelling to Mars before landing in Jezero crater near the planet's equator, where it will hunt for evidence of ancient life. Billions of years ago, when Mars was wetter, Jezero held a lake that could have supported primitive microbial organisms. The UAE and China have also launched Mars missions in recent weeks. Hong Kong authorities have disqualified 12 pro-democracy candidates from upcoming elections, deepening political tensions in the Chinese territory. Opposition legislators had hoped to obtain a majority in the Legislative Council in September's poll after Beijing's imposition of a highly controversial national security law. Among those barred are high-profile activists Joshua Wong and Lester Shum. The government said the candidates were not fit to run for office. The killer of one of Uganda's best-known mountain gorillas, Rafiki, has been jailed for 11 years. Felix Bayumakama has pleaded guilty to illegally entering a protected area and killing a gorilla. Bayumakama had previously said the gorilla attacked him and he had to kill Rafiki in self-defense. That's according to the Ugandan Wildlife Authority. Mountain gorillas are endangered with just over 1,000 in existence. Meanwhile, Ivory Coast's ruling RHDP party has officially nominated President Alassane Ouattara to seek re-election for a third term. Earlier this year, Ouattara spoke of paving the way for a new generation to lead. His prime minister and preferred successor, Amadou Gon Coulibaly, died of cardiac arrest earlier this month. The opposition has been against the possibility of the president serving a third term. Ivory Coast is due to hold elections on the 31st of October, and the Electoral Commission has promised a fair election. Zimbabwe has agreed to pay $3.5 billion in compensation to white farmers whose land was expropriated by the government to resettle black families 2 decades ago. Long-term bonds will be issued and the government will jointly approach international donors with the farmers to raise funding due to the lack of money. This compensation attempts to resolve one of the most divisive policies of the Mugabe era, when white farmers were evicted from their land to supposedly redress colonial land imbalances. Saudi Arabia's Holy Kaaba in Mecca has been adorned with a new cover known as the Kiswa, marking the beginning of the annual Hajj pilgrimage. Normally costing almost 24 million Saudi riyals, or $6 million, the cover is externally made of 675 kilograms of pure black silk. This year's event has been limited to about 1,000 people from within Saudi Arabia due to coronavirus restrictions. And finally, Britain's Design Museum has reopened with an electronic music exhibition after months of closure due to the coronavirus lockdown. The exhibit will offer a feast for the eyes and ears through its immersive exploration of the history of electronic music. It is hoped that after months of living under restrictions, members of the public will now feel ready to venture out and provide a much-needed economic lifeline to the nation's cultural institutions. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.